Hello guys, welcome back. Now from the previous session, I said we're going to start with web development, coding web applications. Now, what are web applications? Web applications are applications which we use every day, which are basically websites that are very responsive, that behave like a mobile app on our mobile app when accessed from our phones, and are very performant. They're highly performant, production grade applications, and these applications are rendered through the browser. Now, one of the main areas you can use your coding skills is building all these web applications. Now we interact with web applications every day, even if we might not know. Example of web applications are Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. All these are web applications that we use every day. Now we're going to look at the basic structure of every web application. You're going to look at the principle behind every web application, how it is structured and how it works. Now this is the structure of every web application. If you can see, you would notice that every web application follow through this principle, which I'm going to explain right now. Now, all applications have a front end component, have a front end element, and a back end structure. Now, these front end structures are those structures that are communicated by the end users. These are the components that we see every day. These are the components that we access as the end user, and these components consist basically of two major very core components, which is HTML, which is a markup language in structuring the content of a web application or a website, and CSS, which is responsible for which means cascading style sheet, and which is responsible for structuring the layout, the design, the color, the styling, and everything you see that has to do with the design of a website. Now, these static files are just files, bunch of HTML files and CSS files, and they are hosted on a server, a front end server. It just hosts these files, and this server is responsible for returning these files to every user that call up the site you're trying to access. So this is the basic structure. For example, you can access it using your mobile. Now this is the client area. You can access it using your mobile phone or desktop or your laptop, basically. So the principle is just, maybe you go to your browser and you type www.facebook.com. Now that request goes to the front end server, and then it picks up Facebook static files, and then it renders it back to your devices, either mobile or desktop. Now this is the basic principle that every website follows, and I'm going to demonstrate it right about now. Let's go straight to facebook.com. You're going to see, so what we are actually doing is that we are requesting this domain name. It's called domain. We're requesting this, and then we are going to get a response, and that response is going to display the Facebook static content. So let's go right to Facebook. Good. So basically we have been presented with Facebook static content. Again, let me just explain what happened. We typed in Facebook, and then our request got to the Facebook front-end server, and then it displayed the Facebook static content on our screen. Now you'll see that we have some couple of elements. We have a form here, we have a button, we have another button. Now this button is blue, this button is green. The reason why this button is green and this button is blue is styling, which we're going to talk about, which are the major core features of front-end design. Now the reason you see that the form is here and then the Facebook write-up is here, now this also is styling is HTML and CSS at work here. You'd see that some fonts are large, some fonts are small. They are all styling, So we're going to look at it from this perspective. Now it's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic. Uh, we're gonna look at every bit of it. Now, we've seen a practical example of how a front-end server, delivers static pages. Now, the reason why I say these are static is because these are just static, writings and images and logos. There's nothing. It's not rendering anything. It's not doing anything dynamically, unless we start entering our email and password before we start doing some dynamic stuff here. But then that is it. I'm going to take another example just to show you that this is the basic structure of how every web application works. It follows this principle. Let me just go to Amazon.com. See, we're requesting Amazon. It goes to Amazon and it is displaying Amazon content for us. Again, these are static contents, static images. You will see that this is designed. This is a grid. Again, this is CSS in play. These are in grids. This, they have the links here. We have the pointer changing and all that. So all this we are going to cover. There's no need to be overwhelmed by this. We will build this to clone most of the sites, so you see how everything works. Now, that's just the front end component of a web application. Now we're going to look at the back end component of a web application. Now, the backend component of a web application have to do with basically building APIs, using different languages, communicating with databases, communicating with other APIs to get data from other source. Now I'm going to give you a scenario of how it works. Now this backend bit and this front end bit is what makes up a complete full stack application. If you have only the front end and you don't have the back end, then it's not a complete application. You have to have the back end server up and then the front end server up. Now we are also going to build our back end server from scratch. Yes, we are going to build it and it's going to be exciting. Now you might choose to be to pick an interest in one of these fields. You might decide to become a front-end developer, in which case you're going to be dealing more with HTML and CSS. You're going to be building user interfaces for yourself or companies, responsive designs and all that, which is great. Then you might also decide to focus more on the back end, in which case you're going to be building the business logic for a company or for yourself or your side project, which is also great as well. Building APIs with different languages. You can use JavaScript, you can use Python, you can use Rust and all that, and it is all exciting. Then you can decide to be both front-end developer and a back-end developer, in which case you become a full stack developer, which is also a very interesting one. Now it all depends on your capacity to learn these things. Again, these are not difficult to learn. They are quite straightforward. You just need to understand this basic principle. Now I'm going to demonstrate this principle to you. So basically, you've seen how we're able to call up Facebook and call up Amazon, and we get rendered. So about then, we're just dealing with this front end server. We haven't started dealing with this back end. Now we have we've seen Facebook front end pages. We're looking at the forms and all that. So if we input our username and password from the front end, now that username and password is going to send a request to the back end server using through an API. It's called an API. API stands for application programming interface. Now it's going to send a request. Basically what it's saying is, hey, please check if this email address and password is correct, from the database. Now during this time, you're going to see your page loading and all that. So this is just what is happening. It's to check if your username and password is correct, and then if it's correct, we're going to get a response. We're going to get a response from the server saying that, okay, you can log in because your username and password is correct, or you cannot log in because your password or username is not correct. Now there are some specific terms I want you to understand or to get familiar with, like the request and response. Now we've seen that in action both on the front end part and then on the back end part, like I'm explaining. Now the request is the URL we're typing, then the response we're getting is the static page. Same with this. If we type amazon.com, that is the request. The response we are getting is this HTML element. Okay, so request and response, those are very important concepts because we're also going to be applying it on the backend. As you can see, we are going to request access to the Facebook server, and then we're going to get a response based on what we provided. So request and response is very, very important. Now another concept that is very, very critical in web development is building a responsive web application. Now what do I mean by responsive? Now we are accessing the sites from a desktop view. You would see that it's quite elaborate, it's large. But then if I go ahead and let me just make this look like a mobile, and you see how the site will adjust itself. You see how the site adjusted itself, make it very compatible. So all this is responsive design, because most of your users good. Now you see that after refreshing, the site have automatically changed its structure, but it's the same site, but it has changed. Now this is very, very important when building a web application, because billions of users are going to be accessing your site using their mobile phones, and if they are not getting a responsive layouts, they would probably just bounce off your site. As you can see, it's responsive. This side menu wasn't there when we're accessing it from the desktop, but it's there now. So all this is CSS. There's no need to worry, we will cover all of this. This is all CSS. This is cascading style sheets. If I expand it, you see that the pictures are expanding and all that. So all this is CSS. So as a front-end developer, if this is what you're interested in, we're going to cover it. You're going to take it from scratch. So same with Facebook. If I make it responsive, and just refresh it. Good. You see that the Facebook has changed, the form has changed, and all that. So your site has to be responsive. If not, it will be scrolling sideways, and you don't want your users don't want to be scrolling, sideways and all that. So I hope you understand this concept, and you as you can see, all applications follow through this principle. We have a front end structure, and then we have a back end structure. So let's just let me go ahead and just type show you the implementation of a backend, how backend is in action. So let me just come here and type let's just make it desktop so you can see everything clearly. Okay, so let's type a bad email address. Let's just say test@mail.com. Password is password. Okay, now we're going to send a request to Facebook backend with these credentials, asking Facebook to let me in, and see what will happen. Now Facebook is authenticating. What is just going on is, it's checking its database to see if these credentials are actually correct, if they belong to me or they're correct. So during this process, the app, it's been loading. So now we get a response. We get a response from Facebook server telling me that the email address I entered is not correct. And the only way Facebook can tell me this is because it has checked its database and saw that the credentials are provided, they are not correct. So basically this is the structure of every web application. So it's very, very important we look at this, because all the applications we are going to be building is going to revolve around this structure. We must have a front end, which is HTML and CSS, and we have a backend server which can be built using different languages, like I said, with Python, JavaScript, and all that. So I hope you're interested. I hope you are excited. So we're going to start with the front end. In the next session, we start with front end. We're going to build a basic layout, a basic layout, and we'll build our basic backend server, and then we host our API, and you see everything in action.